A rich woman humiliates Ronaldinho in first class, but he gives an epic lesson. The Air France Flight 709 was departing from Paris to Brazil. It was a luxury trip with high-standard onboard service, spacious seats, and a reserved environment for those who could pay dearly for comfort. The first class was almost entirely occupied by businessmen, discreet celebrities, and some figures from European high society. Ronaldinho Gaúcho entered last, without security, without drawing attention, wearing a simple black t-shirt, sports pants, and a black cap, his hair tied back as always. Even so, his smile was unmistakable. He calmly walked to seat 2A, where he would spend the next 12 hours. In the adjacent seat, a sophisticated-looking woman observed everything with a critical gaze. She wore expensive jewelry, sunglasses, white leather gloves, and an impeccably tailored light blue coat. She had an upright posture, her chin slightly raised, and a designer bag resting on her lap. As soon as Ronaldinho sat down, she frowned, looked him up and down as if assessing something out of place, approached a flight attendant, and, in an audible tone sufficient for the other passengers to hear, asked, "Excuse me, is this man really in first class?" The flight attendant confirmed with a gentle smile, but the woman was not satisfied. She turned to Ronaldinho and said with icy arrogance, "I think there's been a mistake. This seat is first class. Perhaps yours is back there." Ronaldinho simply looked at her, maintaining his smile, calmly pulled out his phone from his pocket and leaned back in his seat as if nothing had happened. But the woman did not stop. She spoke to the flight attendant, saying she did not feel comfortable, that it was not safe, that it was unfair for someone dressed like that to be there. Some passengers looked at the situation with curiosity. One of them, sitting 2 rows back, opened his eyes in shock upon recognizing who the man in the cap and black t-shirt was. He whispered something to the companion next to him, and both began to discreetly record with their phones. Ronaldinho remained calm, not saying a word, just listening to music through his headphones, while the woman continued to complain. She went so far as to say, "This space is reserved for people of a certain level, and frankly, that type should know their place." It was at that moment that the atmosphere inside the aircraft began to change. Something was about to happen, but Ronaldinho still hadn't said a word. The tense silence took over the cabin. The woman, clearly used to being heard and obeyed, waited for the crew to do something. She expected them to call Ronaldinho out or at least invite him to change seats, but none of that happened. The flight attendant, trying to maintain professionalism, approached with a low and firm voice. "Ma'am, the passenger is in the correct seat. He has all the documents and his ticket is for first class. We ask that you please respect the other passengers." The woman huffed, crossed her arms, and shot a disdainful look at Ronaldinho. "This is absurd," she murmured. "I paid a lot to be here, not to share space with the—" Ronaldinho took one of his headphones off and gently turned to her, still with his serene smile. "Would you like to change seats? We can talk to the flight attendant. Maybe you can get another place further away from me." The woman was taken aback by his calmness. She expected anger, confrontation, perhaps a rude response. But Ronaldinho's kindness only increased her frustration. "I'm not leaving my seat," she replied, her nose in the air, "and I don't need you to talk to me. I just want you to understand that this place is not for anyone." Ronaldinho then nodded slowly as if he understood much more than he appeared to, put his headphones back on, and closed his eyes, trying to rest before takeoff. It was then that a tall man dressed in black clothes appeared discreetly in the row next to them, observing the scene attentively. He was a famous passenger too, albeit more reserved. He approached the flight attendant and whispered something, then came to Ronaldinho with a discreet smile. "Ronaldinho, it's an honor to see you here. I've followed you since your days at Grêmio. It's great to find you on this flight." Ronaldinho raised his hand and greeted the man, while other passengers began to whisper. Little by little, the arrogant woman began to notice the glances. She was now the center of attention, but not in the way she liked. "Why is everyone looking?" she asked in a low, suspicious voice. Her discomfort began to grow, and at that moment, without her realizing it, the weight of what she had said began to return like a boomerang. The woman started to fidget in her seat, uncomfortable. The looks in her direction were now clear and direct. Some passengers shook their heads in disapproval, others whispered among themselves, and she finally realized that something was wrong, not with Ronaldinho, but with her own attitude. Still, her pride was greater. She adjusted herself, put her sunglasses back on, raised her chin, and pretended to ignore everything, but her discomfort was visible. The plane began its takeoff procedure. The lights dimmed partially, and the flight attendant passed by checking seatbelts. Ronaldinho remained calm, listening to music, looking out the window, but it was clear that he knew exactly what was happening. Minutes later, when the plane was already in full flight, a young crew member approached him discreetly, holding a small gift box wrapped in elegant cloth. "Signor Ronaldinho, this is a special gift from the aircraft's commander. He asked me to say that it is an honor to have you on board, and that, as a former player, he was inspired by you many times during his youth." Ronaldinho smiled, shook the attendant's hand, and humbly thanked him. "Thank you so much, brother. It's always good to receive affection, especially in unexpected moments." At that moment, the rich woman's eyes widened. Her face lost color as the realization began to sink in slowly. She looked at Ronaldinho again, but now she no longer saw a common, poorly dressed man. She saw someone receiving special treatment, inspiring respect and admiration, a name that echoed around the world. And she, at the height of her arrogance, had been the only one not to recognize him. "Ronaldinho," she murmured, almost voiceless. "Is he?" The man next to her, who had not spoken a word until then, replied firmly, "Yes, ma'am, it's Ronaldinho Gaúcho, one of the greatest idols in football history, world champion, a genius both on and off the field, and most importantly, one of the most humble people you could have met." The woman didn't know how to respond. Her face burned with shame. For the first time in a long time, she felt small. The woman remained silent, seemingly paralyzed inside. Her pride had taken a deep blow, and now she was struggling against the shame of her own words. She was caught between the desire to disappear and the need to try to correct her mistake, but she didn't know how. Ronaldinho, for his part, remained calm. He took the gift given by the commander, opened the box slowly, and inside found a small memento, a miniature replica of the ball from the 2002 World Cup final. He smiled, gently ran his finger over the object, and for a moment his eyes lost themselves in memories. The man sitting behind him, who had previously whispered with his friend, couldn't hold back. He stood up, approached with his phone in hand, and asked respectfully, "Sorry to bother you, superstar, but could you record a video for my son? He's 8 years old and is your biggest fan. He sleeps with your Barcelona jersey every day." Ronaldinho laughed and said, "Of course, partner. Let's do it right now." He recorded the video with care, sending a hug to the boy, telling him to never give up on his dreams, and that the most important thing was to play with joy. The man thanked him, emotional, and returned to his seat with shining eyes. The rich lady saw everything. Her face now did not hide her embarrassment. She tried to avoid the gaze of those around her, but it was impossible. She knew she had been unjust, prejudiced, and, above all, ignorant. She judged a man solely by his appearance and failed to see his essence. With trembling hands, she took off her sunglasses, took a deep breath, and slowly turned to Ronaldinho. Her voice came out hesitantly, almost faltering. "Mr. Ronaldinho, I'm sorry. I didn't recognize you. I was extremely rude." Ronaldinho looked at her in the eyes. His smile had not disappeared, but now there was something more there. A look of someone who had been through that many times. A look of understanding, but also of awareness. "It's no problem, ma'am. I'm used to being judged by my clothes, by the way I speak, by my history. You're not the first, but I hope you'll be the last to do this to someone." She lowered her head, unable to respond, and at that moment learned that humility doesn't come from money or social class. It comes from the soul. The woman remained silent, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time: shame for herself. Ronaldinho's response was not delivered with anger or mockery. It was said with such sincere calm that it hurt more than any shout. She took a deep breath, still looking down, and tried to continue. "I grew up in an environment where everything was about appearance. My parents were obsessed with status. I was taught to stay away from people who dressed differently, spoke differently, or came from poor neighborhoods. I grew up believing that this protected me, but today